Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to whoever is tuned in for our first video. My name is Annie, and I'm one of a group of first-year PhD students that are gathered here today in this video series. So a few of us have decided to start just a short weekly series that we're going to run over the course of the shutdown, where we talk about how the COVID-19 shutdown has affected PhD students working from home. All of us here are first years, so kind of struggling to find things to do at home, talking about how that is affecting us. And then we're also every week going to talk about a piece of COVID-19 related news or research that's featured in the media recently, and just have like a journal style discussion around that. We're streaming these on YouTube Live, so there is a live comment section. Please feel free to send in any comments or questions. Join in on the discussion. That's kind of the point of this. And if you can't catch up on the live videos, these will remain on YouTube to be watched at a later point, and hopefully we will try and make a podcast out of these as well. So I will start by going around with all the introductions. First off, myself, as I said, I'm Annie. I'm a first year PhD student in the School of Chemistry in Trinity College Dublin. And hopefully, one day, once the shutdown ends, I will eventually get to start on my research, which will be focused on a green chemistry approach to the synthesis of magnetic nanoparticles for biomedical applications. Samia, maybe you can introduce yourself next.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Samia, a PhD first year student at UCL. I'm in the EIL lab, so the Electrochemical Innovation Lab of the chemistry department, the chemical engineering department, sorry. I am working on trying to understand basically why our batteries don't last as long as they should, and also trying to improve them so that they can last longer for future energy demands. Jamie, take over.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm actually also at UCL. I'm in the electronic engineering department, and my PhD is about a technique that you can use to place individual atoms in the exact positions that you want them in. And this technique has potential applications to build a new kind of faster computer called a quantum computer. Tigran, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tigran. I'm a first-year PhD student in Trinity College Dublin in the School of Chemistry. My project is on filling carbon nanotubes with different guest materials and studying their structure to use them for cathodes and anodes for new batteries and technology like that. Ollie?
Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm at Imperial College London. I'm a first-year PhD student in the Material Science department. My PhD is looking at a more eco-friendly way to make ammonia for fertilizer and maybe even a carbon-free fuel. So back to Annie.
Nice. So as I said, we're all first-year PhD students, and we're all part of the same CDT, which is a Centre for Doctoral Training. And our one is the CDT in the Advanced Characterization of Materials. So we're kind of a mix of chemists, physicists, engineers, all kind of loosely doing research related to material science. As I said in the beginning, in these videos, we just kind of want to talk about how the shutdown has affected PhD students and maybe just academics in general working from home. Maybe Jamie, you might like to share with us how you've been getting on since the shutdown, what you've been doing to try and keep yourself busy or productive at home.
Sure, yeah. So I'm quite fortunate in that I'm living at home with my family, and so we've actually been able to do a whole lot of activities that we probably wouldn't have really gotten around to doing if it wasn't for the lockdown. We've been putting on like quizzes for each other. So my dad did a quiz about various places we'd been as a family, and my sister did a music quiz with loads of really fun and creative rounds. There was one where you had to guess songs that were played backwards. It turns out that Hey Ya by Outkast is surprisingly danceable even when played backwards.
Good to know. Fair, okay. And how have you been finding, like, I don't know, trying to actually do work from home? How has that been?
I think it's been a bit of a challenge, and I think I have ended up being less productive than I would have been at work. And I think my main piece of advice I would give to people is just don't be too hard on yourself. Like, I think it's fairly inevitable that with all the changes that are happening, you probably are going to end up being a bit less productive and not get so much done, but that's okay. And I think realizing that a sort of week or so into this lockdown made me a lot happier and less stressed. I don't know if you guys have found that as well.
I find that especially, like, every day I'm like, I feel like I'm getting up too late to start work, and I'm probably finishing up too early in the evenings. And then I spend the rest of the evening like being mad at how little I got done that day. But it's not a regular day at the office. I'm sitting at my kitchen table trying to do the same reading all day. So it's not broken up by, the usual activities of being at university, where you're walking around campus to the lab, or you're walking to a coffee shop, or you're having lunch with your colleagues, and then you're reading, and then you're doing research. And I'm just sitting at the table reading for hours and hours, or hopefully hours. And then, I mean, like you said, Jamie, at the end of the day, it is a global pandemic. So I think we can give ourselves some slack for not doing like a full productive day's work. What about you guys? Samia, how have you found it?
Yeah, so I actually initially found it really stressful, thinking that like there was not going to be a deadline. Like, it's quite hard to motivate yourself when there isn't like an end date to this, I think, is the key thing for me. Like, when you're not working towards anything, I mean, obviously we've just started, so we still have like 4 years ahead of us. So I think that was a big thing. And yeah, I was just getting frustrated with myself, finding it really stressful. You're constantly like receiving emails about like what's going on in the world, blah, blah, blah. So it's not that easy to get work done. But once you, as Jamie said, like come to terms with, like, it's okay, doesn't matter. As you said, it's a global pandemic. Like, there are worse things going on in the world right now than you not doing like a full day of work. And that's basically what has kept me sane.
Yeah, definitely. Ollie, I think you gave us some interesting advice. We were talking about this a few days ago. What were you saying about?
I think it's just important to take breaks during your day, because I find like you said, when you're just sitting and like reading the same thing for hours and hours and hours, it's very easy to just lose puff and like just sit there staring. So like just going to like a different room for a bit, like stepping away, like I don't know, making a pretend friend to talk to, who knows, like just stepping away. Also just calling real friends as well is a good thing. Like staying in contact with people, and
absolutely,
not just staring at a screen.
Like I've spent so much of the time at home just sitting, because there's nowhere else to go. My office is like one of 3 rooms in the house, so and also I'm in like a very densely populated area, so I'm trying to avoid really going outside much. Like, I'm not even going out for many walks during the day.
Right.
So Tigran, how have you found it working from home?
It's kind of like echoing all the points that have been said, because like we spent the first 3 months getting ready, writing up stuff to prepare for experiments, and then just as you're about to do an experiment, everything shuts down. So it's kind of that frustration. So it's kind of frustration that there's more reading to do and you don't have access to the lab and stuff like that. I know for me personally, like focus at home isn't a thing. So what I found is that if you start learning something else that's completely separate to what you're doing in terms of research, that kind of helps bring the focus back to when you are actually going to read the research that you're doing. So I'm doing a lot of reading on music theory and just kind of music, because that keeps my mind at bay. And then once I wake up in the morning, it's like time to do work. I know I'll do work knowing that in a few hours I'll work on something else. So that's how I go about it.
Fair. Yeah. What you said about like not being able to go to the lab. I mean, again, as first years, I don't think a lot of us have any data to work with. So it really is just reading for me at this point. But my supervisor has said that at least with all this time to read, surely the experiments we do when we go back will be very well thought out. So there is that to look forward to, some great successful experiments, I hope.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, fair. So does anyone have any kind of final tips on how to try and not get carried away with beating yourself up over not getting stuff done, or any tips to like keep yourself motivated? Tigran, you were saying to try and take up a new hobby maybe as something to break from the research.
Yeah, essentially, like, I know in Dublin and in Ireland especially, like, you can't really go very far from your house. I'm not sure what it's like in the UK now, but so it's kind of like developing a new hobby that you can do within your own home and stuff like that. So I've seen a lot of my friends buy guitars online, and we're like, all right, I'll learn how to play the guitar. Or I've seen a friend of mine learn how to knit or stuff like that, just to keep your mind at bay, keep your mind focused on something that's different to your work. And that kind of also breaks up your day, because if you I know personally, if you sit down and you're like, okay, I'm going to read for 4 hours, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you want to do something for an hour, then do something else for an hour, then maybe come back to the first thing for an hour. And breaking it up makes it a lot more interesting than sitting down for 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's my personal experience with it.
I'd like to add on that as well. Sorry. I'd like to add on that as well, that like it's important to make sure that although you have like set working hours, you're able to then like fully like go offline, work in the evenings and stuff like that. I think it's easy to do like a couple of hours here, then a couple of hours later on, and then the days just become muddled up, and your weeks and weekends just merge and stuff like that. So I think it's nice to keep kind of some kind of routine in doing work as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important to take time for yourself, like, and be kind to yourself, especially, like, otherwise you're just going to burn out and be sad.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I find, you know, if maybe earlier on in the day I haven't been very productive, and then suddenly you find yourself in a good flow towards the end of the day, you maybe have a tendency to just keep going, and then it's, you know, maybe 7 p.m. and you're saying, okay, I'll finish up now, but I think it's important, especially when, you know, now your home is home and work.
Yeah.
To definitely, as you guys were saying, separate the work day from your home life as much as possible. And by sticking to like work hour schedule, I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, guys. So every week I think we'll kind of do something like this, talk about what we've been up to. Maybe we'll come up with some very unique or interesting ideas on how to stay busy. Who knows? But for now, I think we'll move on to the journal club discussion type part of the video. So this week, Ollie has found some just media pieces, headlines that she's pulled together about science denialism around COVID-19. So this will go from talking about the 5G warriors all the way to the US president. So Ollie, maybe you could give us a summary of some of the things you've found.
Yes, I will just share my screen now. Let's hope this works. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Good. Okay, so yeah, today we're going to be talking about science denialism, misinformation, and COVID-19. So this is just a nice little soundbite from the World Health Organization, who are saying, at WHO, we're not just battling the 2019 COVID virus, we're also battling the trolls and conspiracy theorists that push misinformation and undermine the outbreak response. It's kind of the idea of what we're going to be talking about. So this first slide is just a few of the kind of myths and conspiracy theories that are kind of going around the internet. One is that cocaine can kill the virus. So I think lots of people have been snorting cocaine because they think it'll help, but obviously it won't. There's some quite sad ones as well. Lots of people are drinking alcohol and dying from like methanol poisoning, like this poor girl in Iran, because they think that will help kill the virus. There's also this really horrible one where there's this miracle mineral solution that's been peddled that contains bleach.
Yes, the miracle mineral.
Which is obviously not a very good thing to drink. Apparently can kill the virus. And there's also this big one that coronavirus is leaked from a high security lab in Wuhan, and China's trying to cover it up, which is, in my opinion, pretty unlikely. Does anyone have any views on these?
I was just going to add to that second one there about cocaine. I heard recently a story in the west of Ireland where some guy was caught drink driving at a Garda checkpoint. So like the police, or the Gardaí as we call them, are setting up checkpoints around the country, obviously, to check if people are going on unnecessary journeys or not. So this guy was stopped at one of those checkpoints, found to be drink driving, and so he decided to run for it. So he got out of the car, started running away,
Oh my God.
and then the police were like, okay, well, we're going to search the car, and they found a load of cocaine.
Wow.
So, like, rather than just, stay in the car and get done for drink driving, now he's done for far worse charges. Who knows? Maybe he thought the cocaine was for killing the virus. Maybe he thought he was doing a good deed. Who knows?
Thought it was with the Red Cross or something. But yeah, kind of the idea is that there are these massive conspiracy theories that are going around the internet, and it's kind of hard to control them and debunk them. There's also, of course, the big one, which is the 5G conspiracy theory. So for those that don't know, there's this theory around the internet that these 5G towers are either the coronavirus is covering up for supposed health risks of 5G, or the 5G network is actually causing coronavirus, both of which are just not true. There's not a single scientifically substantiated adverse health effect that can be attributed to normal 5G installation. As for the coronavirus cover-up 5G thing, I think some people started saying that it was only appearing in places where there was 5G, but there's corona outbreaks in countries that have no 5G, which is ridiculous. But it's really gathering quite a lot of steam. So there are a few reasons for this. Maybe I think one of the main ones is that people are at home and they're all isolated, and then there are these social media groups like kind of building up and up and up, and everyone's just kind of feeding off everyone else's fear. There's also these unscrupulous news outlets. So, for example, the Daily Star published an article the day after Britons were ordered to stay inside, saying that coronavirus fears 5G Wi-Fi networks could be acting as accelerator for disease. And then had lots of quotes from non-scientists in their articles. So that's just it's just clickbait basically, and it's just gonna ramp up the fear as well. And all of these groups, these online groups, kind of have using the same kind of rhetoric as other science denialists. So one of the main things about science denialism is it's people who are rejecting authority. They think that authoritative figures are kind of lying to them or trying to hide something from them, and they have to reject all of that completely and find things out for themselves. So yeah, I was just wondering, anyone got any ideas on this point?
Yeah, I think with the 5G thing, it's like, people are scared, obviously. That the whole pandemic is such a huge unknown. Even the scientists don't know everything about it yet. There's still a lot to be discovered. And when people are scared, I think they frantically look for, some kind of easy explanation to try and soothe those fears. And blaming it on another maybe unknown, because not a lot of people know a lot about 5G. That's just a way to try and take, saying, oh, okay, well, that caused it, so, I'll just stay away from that, and now I fear it less. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I feel like 5G towers might be a little bit less scary if there's a reason that they can attach to than it's just a virus that's just attacking us because that's what nature does. I think it's a bit less scary. Sorry, Tigran, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we got a comment there talking about the 5G masts in the Northern Ireland being set on fire, which is kind of a very, I don't know, macabre, ironic case, because the 5G masts that they did set on fire were actually 4G and 3G masts that were necessary for the local hospitals that needed to fight coronavirus outbreaks and stuff like that. So, hijacking this comment, I think it's kind of the fear of people not knowing how certain technologies work. And because of that fear, they, latch on to other stuff that they also don't know how it works and stuff. And they claim that, because I don't know how this works and how this works, the two wrongs make a right. Which kind of doesn't help any sort of conversation whatsoever. So
yeah, definitely.
And I think that's a sign that, maybe we as scientists need to do more to explain to people in terms that they can at least somewhat understand how these technologies work. Like 5G and 4G, they're essentially just sending signals in via microwaves, which is actually just a form of light. It's essentially a sort of color of light that we can't see, and it's not actually that different to things that people know about. And I think more needs to be communicated to people about what it actually is. And once you realize that the signals sent by 5G are the same things that are sent by 4G and by Wi-Fi, which of course haven't caused the coronavirus despite being in operation for many years, it then becomes a lot harder to explain how 5G could suddenly be doing something weird.
Yeah, definitely. I think the problem is that scientists tend to ignore conspiracy theories like this. Like, for example, this fact-checking organization called Full Fact actually warned about the rise of 5G conspiracy theories last summer, but no one really addressed it. No one really came out properly to say it's fine. No one really produced like an explanation as to why it was fine, like you're saying. And then you get into the situations like this when a global pandemic, when everyone's just terrified all the time. So it's just going to get worse. But yeah.
Why was it 5G that people decided to make a big deal about? Like, why not 4G? When we moved to 4G, I don't remember there being any kind of panic about it.
It's just the correlation. There's two things happening at the same time, right? Coronavirus and 5G being released.
Yeah, maybe.
People just, as you said, like want to look for a reason why it's happening. And like these two things are happening at the same time. Oh my God, it's coronavirus. But it's not.
It might also be because of, because I know a lot of the 5G technology and towers come direct from China rather than all the 4G and 3G stuff, because all that came from other international groups. But most of this is coming straight from China. So this, there could be a peddling of conspiracy theory behind that too.
So it's like a xenophobic aspect as well.
Perhaps. Yeah, because the coronavirus started in China and all these towers probably come from China as well. So that might be adding fuel to the fire.
Well.
Deep-rooted conspiracy.
Yes. Okay, so going to move on to some more stuff about basically, these groups on the internet that are just rising up that are basically just fueling everyone's panic. So you get these social media groups spreading myths and conspiracy theories. So they post things like, does the coronavirus exist? And saying they don't buy into the paranoia. It's a $2 trillion scam. And then there's people just spreading like horrific misinformation. So you get a mother asking what to do about her child who's come down with a fever. Instead of getting them tested or seeking medical advice, they advise her to rub lemon oil down the child's spine and place slices of onion at her feet, which is obviously ridiculous. But there's
it reminds me of some of those like old style cures that people had back in the day, of like the seventh son of a seventh son, or drinking some mystery potion, or
like plague
like
doctors.
bloodletting.
Or I mean, even just like in our grandparents' time, or my parents' time, like communities, maybe just the west of Ireland, but like communities had these kind of theories, like for jaundice, there was like the cure, and I mean, I've heard stories of them working, and it's always baffled me, because obviously that person was alive to tell the tale afterwards, and what their parents did to try and cure them. But I'm not promoting the onion slices cure. It just reminds me of those like mystery things people come up with.
Yeah, well, I think it's again another case of people seeing correlation and assuming that implies causation, right? They see that this person got better and they did this remedy for them, therefore the remedy must work.
It's this. So they're misunderstanding the scientific process there. Would you say, Jamie?
Exactly.
I would, yes.
Okay. But so there's also a slightly more shady thing about these social media groups, because there's evidence that the Russian state media has been spreading these conspiracy theories with the aim to aggravate the public health crisis in Western countries. So they're latching on to this science denialism and all this hysteria that's happening in the West to try and destabilize it, which is a bit scary. So yeah, there's this quote here saying that the deliberate spreading of false information about COVID-19 could have serious consequences. And the fact that it's happening on social media through private channels, putting the onus on friends and family to identify whether the information they're seeing is misleading. So I think this is kind of the point of perhaps people who are in these social media groups aren't really able to distinguish facts from fiction, because perhaps all of their friends in their little echo chamber are telling them that it's all lies, and then they don't really move that far out of it. So I think we're all a bit guilty of having echo chambers online. Like
Absolutely,
most of my friends have the same political views that I do. So
but another reason why this is quite interesting and why like misinformation can have such severe consequences is, even if like you're not a believer in like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, like we are at a time now where like our days merge into one. We get bombarded with information. So in the future, like we might develop false memories of like what coronavirus was and like those types of things and how you can cure and stuff. And I think anyone is susceptible to that, really. You don't have to be like a believer of conspiracy theories. You can just be susceptible to it, like psychologically.
I'm just
especially in. Sorry?
That's why it's so important that like we do clarify now like what is and isn't misinformation.
Definitely. I
was just going to add one last
Annie,
point.
go. It's fine.
Just misinformation in general can be spread very innocently. There was a lot of WhatsApp messages getting forwarded around the place. That message telling people not to take anti-inflammatory meds because it could have adverse effects on the virus, but then people who rely on those meds as just their usual course of medication stopped taking them because a WhatsApp message told them not to. But I'm sure that message was forwarded out of a good place, people thinking that they were sharing that info, but also it is very easy to fall victim to misinformation. Sorry, Samia, go on.
No, I was just going to say, on the BBC, I swear, and maybe this is me spreading misinformation, it said that people should stop taking ibuprofen, I think it was, and like that was like something that was something just in case, because they weren't even sure that it was going to happen. So like that can also cause mistrust with like reliable sources such as like the BBC, who were saying like, oh, you know what, stop taking ibuprofen, it might not be the case, but let's prevent it, and I think that also can mean that people are just not going to trust the kind of information that they're getting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Just on that as well, in terms of like trusting sources and stuff like that, I think currently, because of the uncertain situation surrounding the virus and stuff, people are like begging for an answer, even if it's the wrong answer. They want an answer, not this kind of certain, half certain kind of thing. Oh, it might work, it might not work. So I think that kind of pushes them to try these conventionally strange techniques to try and help fight the virus, rather than taking a step back and trying to figure out, okay, why does this work? Asking why.
Because I think one side with science denialism in general is that they're being skeptical of things that are put in front of them, basically, which generally is good. Generally, it's good not to just accept everything that you read, but they're just not accepting. They're not able to differentiate from things that have like been properly put through like rigorous scientific experiments and perhaps things that are not. And then they're also just kind of cherry picking arguments that fit their story that they want to put together. So yeah, I think there's I don't know stuff to do with that. But yeah, so we've just been talking about kind of traditional kind of conspiracy theory kind of things, but then there's also the deliberate, basically, misinformation of entire nations by political figures for their own gain. So we're going to talk about Trump. So Trump obviously is not the best for relying on scientific advice. So in January, he received 2 memos from one of his top advisors, basically how bad the coronavirus would be. So it says here that the lack of immune protection or an existing cure or vaccine would leave Americans defenseless in the case of a full-blown coronavirus outbreak on US soil. This lack of protection elevates the risk of the coronavirus evolving into a full-blown pandemic, imperiling the lives of millions of Americans. And then there was another memo that said that the COVID-19 could kill 1.2 million Americans and infect as many as 100. But Trump basically just didn't listen to this and just continued tweeting and all this stuff about basically saying it's just as bad as the seasonal. So then you have stuff like this. So yeah, he's downplaying the seasonal flu all the time. He's saying lots of people die of the flu, yet nothing changes, when this is just, it's just not a comparison at all. COVID-19 has a much higher mortality rate than the flu.
Is Ollie's mic cutting out for you guys as well?
Oh no.
A little bit, yeah.
No worries.
That's
just point out that maybe we missed a little bit of that.
And stuff. Okay.
So you were saying that he was downplaying it by comparing it to the seasonal flu?
Yes. So this tweet here especially is basically saying lots of people die from the flu every year, which is true. But COVID-19 is far more aggressive than the seasonal flu, so it's not fair to compare the two. He also keeps trying to hark back to the H1N1 swine flu epidemic that the US saw under the Obama administration. But again, that's not a fair comparison. If you look at the number of confirmed cases and the number of confirmed deaths, this was quite a while ago, actually. This is the days after the 60th case. And you can see H1N1 is just far less aggressive than the coronavirus. So it's just not fair. He's just basically, it's unsure whether he actually misunderstands the science and this is what he actually believes, or is he just saying this stuff because he doesn't want to spook people and doesn't want to spook the stock markets and wants to keep in power? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Just on an earlier point, we had a comment there as well in terms of misinformation, where from Mark V, where he says that a colleague from his institute, who's also a scientist, spread a message where you can't be infected if you can hold your breath for a certain amount of time. So I assume that, so just going back to the whole misinformation thing, where it's not so much of a regular average person's issue, it's more of like a human issue where we can easily be susceptible. And back to Trump, where he's trying to twist the truth in his favor, he can also misrepresent things to help his case or whatever, or to try and find an answer for the people that will eventually vote for him and who are begging for an answer.
Yeah, and when my kind of thinking is when the president of the United States, like one of the most powerful men in the world, is belittling the coronavirus like this, contradictory to all the science that's available, like what's the person going to think? Like, you've got a very powerful man and science just battling against each other, so yeah, it's hard. Definitely,
it's hard to watch.
Definitely hard to watch.
Tigran, I think that comment about the holding your breath thing, I think I heard something similar, but it was meant to be, if you were checking yourself for symptoms.
Yeah.
If you can hold your breath for 10 seconds or something without coughing, then you probably don't have one of the early symptoms. But I can see how that can easily spread out of control into if you can hold your breath, you don't have it, you're immune.
But even holding your breath for 10 seconds, if you have the symptoms to see if you have the corona, is not necessarily a test to see if you have the corona.
This is fair.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is just more on Trump's response and just how it's fundamentally lacking and kind of the reasons why. So the main point about this stuff is the missing 6 weeks. So on the same day, South Korea and the USA both had their first coronavirus patient. South Korea has had barely any cases. Like they've controlled it really, really well. Whereas obviously the USA haven't. Obviously, it's a huge problem in the USA at the moment. So it's kind of thinking about why. And kind of the thread of this is basically just Trump ignoring advice of experts and advice of scientists. So After the H1N1 epidemic, kind of the pandemic unit had lots more power, I believe. And they made this playbook, but basically they said, this is what you should do if you see a new virus, this is what you should do if it's spreading from human to human, basically laying out everything that should be done if there's something like coronavirus came up. And they just threw it all out. In 2018, they disbanded the pandemic unit. So there was no coordinated response to the coronavirus. There's also just Trump lying to the American people. So Trump said the coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. And this woman, the Nancy Messonnier, the CDC's top official on respiratory diseases, said that disruption to everyday life might be severe. And apparently Trump was so angry about this, and it's basically its impact on share prices, that he shouted down the phone at her boss, who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, which is insane. It's insane that, for one, he'd have such a childish reaction, and for another, that he would lie to the American people about something so dangerous for share prices. And then there's also this little bit here about, I don't know if you guys have heard about chloroquine.
Sorry,
pushed
Ollie,
this
you're breaking
unproven
up
remedy
a bit.
on a whim. Oh no. I'll
I think if you just try
say
to
that
talk
again.
slowly, that might help.
I'll talk slowly. So there's this drug chloroquine, which is used as an anti-malarial. And basically Trump latched onto it and thought it would be great for basically no reason, except I think that it's antiviral perhaps, and tried to push it through the FDA. And the FDA did it, despite the fact that they're looking into it, despite the fact there's no evidence it will work and some indication it could have serious side effects. So a former senior official said, we have the FDA bowing to political pressure and making decisions completely counter to modern science. So again, when you have this kind of weird anti-science sentiment from the president of the United States, and then the FDA agrees with it, how is this meant to improve trust in science amongst the American people? And then also, this is just a point, basically, because it's ridiculous about how bad his response was. So ventilators are really important. They have been really terrible at providing ventilators to places. They said respirators, ventilators, all of the equipment, try getting it yourselves, which is insane. And to date, this date, to the 28th of March, Trump had supplied 400 ventilators to New York, where they need actually 30,000. So that's just how terrible their response has been, because they haven't been listening to experts.
Yeah,
Does anyone have any points on that then?
I had heard about even just that quote, try getting it yourselves. I heard that when states did try to get it themselves, organizing freight planes coming from China, bringing over PPE ventilators, when the planes would land in the States, the federal government would swoop in and say, no, states can't stockpile PPE. We have to take this for a national supply. And now all of these states are going, okay, but where is the national supply? Where is all of the PPE that you've stockpiled away from all of us trying to get it? And can we actually use some of it now? But I honestly, I don't know what's happening. Myself and my housemate were talking about that. Is Trump trying to stockpile it all for himself? is it all just for Washington, D.C.? Does that population need presumably hundreds of thousands of masks? I
made a comment a few days ago actually on this, where it's like it's taken out of House of Cards, where the president in the show essentially underfunds the emergency response unit for his own political gain, and a disaster happens and they need the emergency response unit, but there's nothing ready there, so it's just chaos, which is just kind of playing out in reality.
Real life at this point.
It's not listening to experts. It's thinking that you're above what experts are telling you and what scientists are telling you. I think partially Trump has this belief that he somehow knows everything when he in fact knows nothing. So
he's one of the most powerful people. He wants to keep that, and he doesn't want to listen to anyone else. He needs to be the person with the final word. And also, he's gotten to where he is because of the the contradicting things that he said. Yeah, so I guess he's just going to not stop when it comes to this.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, basically this isn't a new thing at all in the Trump administration. So this is quite an old article from October 2019, but it's basically talking about how Trump's administration is basically just ignoring and getting rid of and undermining scientists where they can. So yeah, he's manipulating research findings for political gain, and special interests are giving improper influence. So yeah, any finding that's restricting business, especially in an energy industry, appears destined for elimination. So yeah, economists from the Department of Agriculture were relocated after they showed that the Trump administration's trade policies would harm farmers. They reassigned a climate scientist to an accounting role after he warned about the impact of global heating on Arctic communities. The EPA's leadership also told scientists to reverse their findings in a report that showed the economic benefits of protecting wetlands from pollution, and suppressed another study that found there's all this scientific knowledge in the Trump administration that, again, they said it reached a crisis point then. I think it's especially in a crisis point now, where they don't, as it is a lack of experts who can help, basically. Is the problem. And I think, how are you meant to have an informed scientific opinion? How are you meant to kind of weigh up truth from lies when your president, well, the American people's president, is like just shutting it down at every opportunity? So I think, really see, sorry, Annie?
I think scientists have to catfish Trump.
Yeah.
I think they have to present their findings in some way that fools him into thinking they'll be positive for the economy or something, like, oh, if we do these things to combat climate change, then your stocks will increase tenfold. I don't know. There has to be some way to play his game or beat him at his own game. I mean, just some of the things you presented there are just shocking.
Yeah.
Very clearly trying to get rid of scientists.
We got a comment on this in terms of the malice and incompetence here. It comes from Christopher Jones. Read the malice or incompetence distinction about Trump's response. Should this affect how scientists et al. Respond to denialism? A good parallel is climate change denialism. Most prominent people who are deniers are still obviously lying and don't believe what they say. So attempting to debunk them in good faith is arguably less worthwhile than the other possible responses.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think
that's Chris, who I know. Hello, Chris. I think, as I understand his point, basically he's saying that these people who are denying science, it's not that they truly believe that it's wrong, it's that they're just very short-sightedly trying to push it away. Whereas then you get people who actually believe it's all a big conspiracy, I don't know, flat earthers. I always think of flat earthers who think that there's kind of something wrong in what they're being told, and something's wrong with the world, and the way that they're trying to fix it is saying that NASA's lying to them and stuff like that. So what do you think? Is it more worthwhile trying to prove these people who are maliciously trying to hide information from people, or is it more worthwhile trying to convert true science deniers to science again? Anyone have any ideas?
I think it's very complex.
I think it's kind of a fight between kind of the economic and politics versus the science behind it, because it's kind of reactionary versus preventative, right? So science is showing you kind of preventative actions in terms of the whole pandemic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of a reactionary case, that would immediately cause, financial problems and stuff like that. And if we start and plan ahead, we don't think that far ahead. So if we, start putting money ahead to prevent a pandemic that may or may not happen, people will ask, well, why? We could use that money for something else, that might look politically or economically better. So it's kind of trying to convince those people, the quote unquote short-minded people, that it's actually worthwhile, and even long-term gain is probably better than the short-term gain that they're trying to get there. By trying to trust science more and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the same vein, where like maybe on one hand you'd like to say, oh well, we should combat the people who are maliciously spreading misinformation or denying science, but then really maybe we should try and combat their followers, who may be the people that just unknowingly or deny science, but not with malicious intent. Because if we could get those people on board, then the malicious leaders maybe don't have followers.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
No, we just got a comment exactly on that. Just as you're talking about it, for Mark V, I think scientists should try to address the general public who is supporting these people. If people don't know how science works, it's easy to make them believe weird stuff like 5G, stuff like that.
Yeah, perfect. That's a good point.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I think also one thing with like the proper like grassroots science nihilists is that kind of what they're trying to do is create this scientific theory, basically. Like, I don't know if this flat Earth. It's always flat Earth. There's this flat Earth documentary where they try to scientifically prove that the Earth is flat, and their scientific method is kind of good. Like, they do this experiment where obviously it shows that the Earth is a globe, so it goes wrong. But the fact that the experiment works and that they're thinking about it in that way, is quite good and quite promising. And I think if you try to engage them and trying to engage that scientific part of their brains and show them actually maybe we can trust all these peer-reviewed articles, maybe we can trust the scientific method, I think perhaps it would be easier to get them round rather than people who are just like, no, because then my money will go away. This slide.
Sorry, I was going to say there's also like a blurred line. Sorry, Ollie.
It's okay.
Are you finished? I was just going to say there's like a blurred line for people maybe like where the science is, like what's influencing it. Is it like funded by industry and stuff like that? So like that can also cause some mistrust in some of the information that we're seeing.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, definitely. There's been. Oh, sorry, Annie. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Ollie.
I was going to say, like, you get quite a lot of people who have the right idea where they're being critical of what's presented to them because, of course, there's bias, but they see bias literally everywhere they look, and they ask for all of these independently funded scientific research, and they don't really understand that, like, I don't know, it's just they don't really understand where the funding comes from, and like they think that everyone's just in like industry's pocket doing the research, basically. I don't know.
Yeah.
Annie, did you?
I was pretty much going to say the same thing in that, fair enough, there are actual cases throughout the history of science where industry-funded research, such as in pharma, can influence some of the results. So you have that kind of spreading distrust, but if you can't separate that from actually knowing what an independently funded study is, then you're just letting the few bad cases along history blur your whole view of what science is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there have been cases of lying in science. Like, do you remember the CDT people? We had that talk on the guy who published loads of false data in Nature, like papers and papers and papers and papers.
That physics guy.
That physics
there
guy.
We go.
I can't remember the name of.
Henry something.
Yeah, Jamie got it. So there is definitely evidence that there are problems in science. Like, obviously we are human, we do make mistakes, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't be like, okay, well, there have been these few people who have abused science for their own gain, so I'm not going to believe anything. Like,
exactly,
really
because like you said, science is human. Science, like everything else, is not flawless. Scientists are not trying to say that we know everything, we have the right answers, because we don't, and that's the whole premise of science. And I think it's important that everyone understands that, because people do seem to think maybe, scientists think they know it all, they have the answers, they're saying, but we don't. And if everyone could see that, then I think we're seen more as human, trustworthy people rather than higher. I don't know. I'm just rambling.
No, but it's true. And also communicating our science in a way that's accessible to everyone. That's key to your point. You know, making it
for sure.
not seem like we know-it-alls, but also speaking people's language, making it like easy for people to understand, and also so that they literally cannot deny the facts.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
yeah, just to go back to kind of coronavirus. So this is kind of the result of Trump's basically denial of scientific fact for his own personal gain. So yeah, basically he did this press conference that was actually apparently quite serious, where he predicted up to 240,000 US coronavirus deaths, which is horrific. But then towards the end of it, he reverts back to his old ways. So he says here, a lot of people have said, ride it out, don't do anything, just ride it out and think of it as the flu, but it's not the flu, it's vicious. He tweeted, it's written down about how it is not as bad as the flu. He says, nobody knew how contagious this was. I don't think any doctor knew at the time. People have not seen anything like this. He was warned in January. And then, admittedly, yes, without mitigation, the death toll could have reached 2.2 million, but he was incredibly reluctant to put in any mitigation. And then at the end, he tries again to kind of put his own efforts positively by saying 100,000 is, according to modelling, a very low number. But yeah, just to put this all into context of American military deaths in the 20th century. So in the Vietnam War, 58,220 Americans died in the military. In World War II, 407,000. And then in World War I, about 117,000. So it's not unlike the figures of the World War I American military deaths, which is ridiculous and completely, well, not completely, but it could have been definitely, the scale of it could have been avoided if he'd acted sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, no American would downplay those numbers. So how could he get away with trying to downplay the COVID-19 related numbers?
Yeah, do you want to just clarify this? I think what Trump is saying is that he's saying 100,000 is, according to modelling, a very low number, as in 100,000 is the lower bound
the lower limit
of the number of deaths. So it's saying that the modelling is saying it could be from 100,000 to 240,000. So chances are it is going to be bigger than the number of deaths in World War One. It's currently at about 30,000, which is like, almost as much as the Vietnam War. And that was from the 1st of April, so like it's now 16th.
It's getting a lot worse.
Based on how things have developed in the past couple of weeks, I can't imagine that they're heading for the lower bound of those predictions.
Oh, Ollie is frozen.
Oh no.
You're back now.
Okay, cool.
It's like when we call it out, you come back.
Cool. Yeah, this is kind of an example as to why do we need science? Like, why should people be listening to scientists? Why should there be experts in government who leaders listen to? I think. Does anyone have any kind of good arguments as to why science denialists should actually listen to science? Maybe.
I've got an argument. I've got an argument that's on my T-shirt, which was given to me as a present last Christmas before this coronavirus was even a thing. But it says here, every disaster movie starts with someone ignoring a scientist, and I think that is something that is quite relevant now.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I think to answer your question, Ollie, it's just kind of everything we had said earlier, where that we need to try and meet them in the middle with some kind of, we're not perfect, we don't claim to have all the answers, but we can help us all as the human race try and make some kind of understanding of this. We were talking before about like the best way to approach science deniers, and we were on about even Brian Cox, going back to flat earthers. I was talking to someone else about this recently, and they were telling me how in the early stages of his, very publicly facing career, he used some very harsh language to describe flat earthers. But now in more recent years, he's kind of come back on that and said, that's not the best way to approach this. You need to approach it with empathy. You have the perfect slide up here, Ollie. You need to approach people with empathy and try and come to some kind of understanding. You know, you can't expect them to try and listen to you if you just approach them with, no, everything you're saying is wrong. And it might be really hard to try and talk to those people and hear things that you know are incorrect and not respond like that. But I think it's really important if you have any chance of trying to break through any kind of barriers there.
Yeah, definitely. I think trying to come from a place where you have some sort of understanding of where they're coming as well, trying to find some common grounds, especially like we've been talking with all the conspiracy theories with the coronavirus. I think we all understand how scared people are. Like, it is very scary. Like, the numbers that we're seeing of people dying, of people getting it, are really horrible. It's not a nice thing to be living through at all. And it's understandable that in that time people will reach out for anything that could make them feel better. And I think if we approach these sort of conspiracy theories from that sort of angle, where we all understand that everyone's human, everyone's afraid, we understand why they're acting like this, and try to come together to try and sort it out, I think empathy is very important, like you're saying.
But also trying to like reassure people that like if you do kind of listen or know what's, try and listen to the kind of scientific advice that's out there, that there is hope. Like these things can get better if we do, because people are scared, they want answers and they want to know what's going on. So I think it's important to have the underlying kind of like, although it could get worse in the next couple of months, if we do listen to what's out there, it can get better, and it will.
Yeah, exactly. I think trying to make people understand that we're not just doing like crazy stabs in the dark, like trying to work things out. Like, there is like defined scientific method as to why we're doing the things that we're doing. There are reasons behind what we're doing, and it's not just, I think especially in the UK as well, I think the UK government went back on themselves a few times. I think I did. Damn it. I had a slide about Boris Johnson. About how the fact that he kept saying about how he wasn't going to stop shaking hands with people, and he shook hands with loads of coronavirus patients, and then he got coronavirus. So I think especially when you have a government that keeps changing what they're saying, I think it can make people quite mistrusting of what the science actually does say. And then, not understanding that, like, we do kind of have an idea of what to do, makes people more afraid and reach out to slightly iffier things.
Sure.
I get you.
Okay. And I think also sorry? No, it's fine. We're done.
No, Ollie, you were saying something.
I was just going to say, because I think earlier when we were talking about this, we were talking about understanding of the scientific method as well. So, like, I can't remember who brought this up, but like understanding what makes science is a good thing to do. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Or your mic kind of cut out there, but I think what you were saying was that if people understand how scientific research is carried out, the scientific method, and how it's funded, where it comes from, who's doing the science, I think, that needs to be better understood. Because I think a lot of the time, when things like this happen, maybe the media gets a scientist to speak on the news or speak on the radio about something. And I mean, if you already believe in science and are comfortable with listening to scientists, that works fine for you. But if you aren't one of those people, hearing a random scientist come on the news, not knowing who they are or where they work, where they're doing the research, where it's coming from, how it happens, then it doesn't have the same meaning to you. So I think maybe more outreach maybe needs to be done in actually explaining how science happens.
Definitely, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I think maybe, or Jamie,
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to say, because I think there's this week, this topic, there's been quite a lot of doom and gloom and talking about all these people who don't listen to science. I think one of the things I do want to say, as it says in this article here, basically debunking science denialism does work, is what this study has found. They found that actually challenging these claims does work. And you can see that actually there are a number of issues where, sure, there are people that don't believe in it, like, say, climate change or vaccines or a whole lot of other things. But actually, you know, scientists have managed to still get a majority of people on board. And in fact, even with coronavirus, I saw a poll out recently that the person that the US population trusted most in the Trump administration was the health advisor who had been calling for stricter measures. This was Anthony Fauci, and Trump was one of the people they trusted least. So clearly there are a lot of people that do believe in science, but it's just we've got to reach out to those few people that maybe are a bit more skeptical, but that we can reach out to those people.
Yeah, and I think that is probably a great point to finish on.
Yes.
Do good science, do it well, make it accessible, and share it in a positive way. And as you said, Jamie, there are positive results. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you everyone who was watching this on YouTube. If you didn't catch the live stream, these will remain on our YouTube channel. We're also going to hopefully try and extract the audio files, make it into a podcast for those of you who want to listen to this while working from home. Yep, thank you so much, everyone. Please tune in next week on Thursday at 1. We will be filming a similar video talking about a new mystery coronavirus-related topic. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.